Aloha and welcome back to WANDEROUS. I am your resilient host, Andrew Crusoe. I have a mild cold. I think I should tell you at the top of this. I'm going to disclaim I'm not 100%, but I don't want to miss a week. I want to keep giving you guys this show, and I want to provide my beautiful Patreon supporters with, it's going to be about 30 photos this week of an amazing day that I had in Istanbul, where I went to basically an ancient Turkish bathhouse. You got to do this. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. If you go to Istanbul, you got to do this. Let's dive into it. Okay, let's talk about the Turkish bathhouse. This place was so cool. It's so cool. You know, when I go to a new city, especially when I go to a country for the first time, I really endeavor not to make the presumption that I will ever come back. Because in life, there are very few guarantees, as we learn. So I wanted to make the most. I really wanted to make the absolute most of my time in Turkey. I wanted to do all of the great Turkish things and just appreciate their rich and deep culture. So that involved, as I've said in previous episodes, that involved going to the Basilica Sister, the Yerebatan Srnici, which was built by the Romans 1,000 years ago. That involved having vegan baklava, which I was very happy to find. If you just go around little Turkish, bakeries and stuff, you can usually find a option that doesn't have animal products in it. And one of the last experiences I really wanted to have was I wanted to go to a Turkish bathhouse. If you're not aware, Turkey is relatively famous for their bathhouses. Many of them are quite old, including the one that I'm going to talk about today. And for the preceding few days, I had been looking at all of the hammams, or amams, which is the Turkish word for bathhouse. I was looking at all the hammams kind of nearby and in Karakoy, which is across the way from Karakoy. Karakoy is on the east side. Karakoy is really close to Galata Tower. And I found one that had really good reviews and was, at the time, I'm sure it's changed, but it was a pretty good price. So I took what did I take actually? I took the light rail, that's right. So I was getting comfortable with taking the light rail over this bridge. It's actually strange that I haven't come across any photos of this bridge. I got stuck in the middle of this bridge. There's a bridge that crosses over the Golden Horn into Karakoy. And there's a metro station actually in the middle of the bridge. It's kind of an odd place. So I pretty much made a day of it. I went in and I did my research, and I stopped by and was able to take a few photos of this mostly restored bathhouse. And it was honestly, it could have used a little bit more restoring, in my opinion. There's a glass dome that was made of these like stained glass bits that I don't think they really got to. But the important parts, the actual part because there's a sauna component that we'll get to, that was restored pretty well. Anyway, I got there and looked at their offerings, and it was pretty obvious that the best one to go for, I think there weren't that many different options as I can recall. But the one that resonated with me was pretty much like the mid-range package. I think maybe the other one had like 2 massages or something. And the mid-range was 700 Turkish lira, which is quite a good deal because at the time, in late 2022, 700 Turkish lira was $35. For an essentially all-day pass to a historic hammam, which I'm not sure I ever mentioned yet, was built in 1454, restored, a plethora of just marble walls. I hadn't even seen the best part yet when I was just talking to them at their front desk, and I'll get to that. It is a bit of a shame, as an aside. It's kind of a bummer that I wasn't actually able to take. I mean, obviously, there's like half-naked people everywhere. There weren't that many people there when I was there. Actually, I picked a good afternoon to go. I think it was in the middle of the week. I do have a video that is public that I will put in the show notes, sort of right after a lot of these experiences in the dressing room, where I share. I mean, the video is just it's just vibes, as the kids would say. It's so many vibes. I think, personally, my opinion, I think I'm glowing in the video because of how much stress has left my body. And it's pretty, I think it's pretty funny how like bouncing off the walls I am in this video. And I'll put that in the show notes. The show notes can be found, of course, wherever you're listening to this. It's in the YouTube description, or in the Spotify description, or in the description on your podcast app. And those are usually the main options. And if you do like the videos, you know, most of these videos are on YouTube Shorts, because I was doing that for a while. Please, if you like them, please hit the like button. It really does help with the algorithm and all that stuff. You know. But before all of those beautiful things would happen, I decided to get some lunch. So I went over to the Galata Konak Cafe, which is rather famous. Galata is Galata, 2 words, has 1,300 reviews on Google Maps as of this recording, probably because it is the best free view of that part of the city. Like I said, it's very, very near, I think it's Karakoy, or bordering Karakoy. It's very near the water. It's like 100 meters from Galata Tower. And it's free. It's a great building. They have good food. And I just did a bit of a photo shoot, which the people who support this show will quite enjoy, I think. I got to see, because you can, of course, anybody who supports the show, it's just $10 $10 American dollars every month. You can cancel anytime. You get thousands, I think probably thousands of behind-the-scenes photos and video and audiobooks at this point. And it really does help support the show, helps keep this show going. So the people who are already supporting, and there are people who are supporting at higher levels than that, and they get more bonuses, but $10 is usually the entry point. And you get to see behind-the-scenes nomadic look at my wacky life. And a lot of these photos are taken in RAW format, so I go in and I adjust them and I fix them. And I just got a really beautiful comment actually it was yesterday, from one of my Patreon supporters saying that last week's bonuses were her favorite ever. She loved the views of Istanbul that I shared last week. And from the roof of Galata Konak Cafe, I had a beautiful view of the Hagia Sophia once again, and the Golden Horn, these huge ferries going up the Golden Horn. Pretty striking. I decided to do one of these in black and white. You can see the Hagia Sophia Mosque and the Blue Mosque in one shot. And of course, Galata Tower itself, where there were dozens of people who paid like $20 to go up in a tower. They were only a little bit, like 10% higher than where I was standing. And I was like, okay. You know, sometimes this is a phenomenon that happens, actually. I'm just realizing this in this moment. This happened to me in Sri Lanka, which we'll get to. Sometimes the best perspective is not on the monument. Sometimes the best perspective is on a tall thing a bit near the monument. This is going to be a theme if you travel enough. This happened to me in Sigiriya with the famous Lion Palace. There's a tower. There's a hill called Pidirangala. This is all in the middle of Sri Lanka. We'll get to this later, but it's better than the flipping going to the thing. Not just because it's cheaper, but because you get a view of the actual monument, which you can't really see if you're on the monument. It's much more picturesque. And that was true in this case. Also had some nice frigate birds and seabirds flying around. But I'm actually quite proud of the alleyway. You know, I had this bird's eye view with this beautiful verdant foliage sort of obscuring bits, and I thought it was very artistic. And there's a minaret, you know, these one of the little towers. I'm not really sure why there was a little minaret. There's just one minaret. There's a very narrow tower that, you know, you'll come across this. They're just kind of inscrutable, usually like 800-year-old architecture that they just kind of kept there. You know, it's there. I mean, it's historical, so we're preserving it. But I wish there had been. I didn't see a plaque or anything. It was kind of in a bit of a courtyard. You couldn't get public access to it. But yeah, I had a lovely little rooftop time, and I've been meaning to go there for a while. So I made it over there, and I would return that night. This was quite a day. So I get back and stop at the ATM and get 700 Turkish video game points, and which when you go to foreign countries, sometimes you realize that money is so invented, would be the word I would say. And one of the amazing things about this hammam was that there were about 3 or 4 levels. It was not a very wide building, and there were these tapestries. I've got one photo of this tapestry of some. I wish I knew who these people were, but because the Turkish people like to tease sometimes. And I was like, "Hey, who is this?" He's like, "Oh, this is the founder of the. This is my great uncle. He's the founder of the mosque." And he said, "No, I'm just kidding. This is just one of our old spiritual leaders from way back." So they like to be a little taquine, as they would say in France. They like to tease you. But on the 3rd floor, you get in, and the first floor is very uneventful, but except for the doorway on the far end. So you go in, and you kind of just, you know, they say, "Well, no, don't go in the doorway yet. Go up to the 2nd floor." Actually, I think it was even maybe the third floor, where there are dressing rooms, many dressing rooms, and they say, "Just find a dressing room. It's very quiet today, so just find," and they give you a key, and you're instructed to just wear a towel. I don't think I even, because they're not. It's not like America. They're not super uptight about nudity. You're expected to be vaguely, you know, uncovered in a Turkish bath. There are codes. There are things. Every bath is, I'm sure, a little bit different. But I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't like showing genitals or anything. But there's a very relaxed attitude. You do get a robe after your sauna experience, but we'll get to that. So I got my towel, changed, I put my clothes in the thing, locked it up, and you put the key. There's this springy wristband, this spiraling plastic wristband that goes around your wrist, and I kind of put that up by my elbow actually to try to get it out of the way. And this key, as has happened to me many times in my life, sometimes all of your normal possessions are just locked away, and you feel like your entire symbol of civilization just been summed up in this one key. This is all you have left. You're going in, you've shed your stuff, and it can be a very freeing feeling. So I made my way back downstairs wearing a towel, and went through into, I think, the most interesting part of the hammam, which was a series of rooms that were all made of marble. The walls were all in marble. It was quite beautiful. This white texture of, it wasn't just pure white, but there was a swirl of colors. And there was seating. I don't have any photos of this because it would be very inappropriate to bring, even though I did have a good waterproof camera, which would have been fine. It would have been very inappropriate to bring any electronics or the optical equipment in there. So I'm reconstructing it now because this was a little while ago, but I decided there was a smaller room, sort of there's like a living room sized room that had seating, marble seats along the edges of the room, and there were these basins, that were holding water. Water was, I think most of it was mostly just coming out of them. You could turn it off or on, but a lot of them were just going. And it was this like waterworks kind of situation. It did remind me a little bit of Spirited Away, which is a film I really love that features a bathhouse. And there was a portal to the left that led into a smaller room. And I went inside, and it was immediately hit by incredible heat. Of course, this was the sauna. And I met 2 women there, and then I met a couple, and I was just talking. We just made some small chat. some chit chat, small talk. I don't know. And I knew that I wanted to sweat it out first. I needed to really just let the stress fall off of my body because it had been a pretty eventful week. I wasn't particularly stressed out, but I was nervous, I would say. I was nervous about this big jump I was about to make to Asia, because technically I was still in Europe, at least that side of the city. This would be my first time in actual Asia. I don't really think that Istanbul is, what I consider Asia prime, we could say. I'm sure you understand. Like when you think of Asia, Asia is an incredibly diverse continent. So it's hard to characterize the continent in one way, but the main features that strike me, are very much a Sino-Tibetan and then a Hindi influence. So I'd say the major influences, with obviously a big Japanese influence and increasingly an Indonesian influence, and a Malay influence. These are the main players, I would say, as Malay, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India and China and Japan are the big players. And I'd never been to any of those countries before. And I was going to land in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, just the next day. Actually, would be my big flight. So I was a bit nervous about that. I believe it was the next day. It might have been the day after, but it was coming up very soon. So I sit in this sauna and I'm letting the stress come off of my shoulders and sweating it out. People were so kind, had such a lovely conversation. Went back out and I was like trying to figure out because I should have done more research. There's a cup in the basin and you're supposed to put it over your head. I was watching other people, because what do you do? You watch other people when you're in a cultural context that's new to you and you're like, I don't know I was not taught how to be in this now, how to be human anyway. And then you go here and then it's extra complicated how to be human. And I was like, well, people are pouring water over their heads, and maybe that's a good idea. And it did. It cooled me off. But the best part of the day, I would say, was when I went back through the anteroom, because there was an anteroom where they would give massages. And I said, hey, I've had my sauna time now. Could I get my massage? Because there are I also believe these were marble. Yeah, they were marble platforms you would lie on. And they said, okay, well, we're doing this guy. Give me a couple minutes. And then they come out and they said, okay, they come out into the room and I'm sat on the marble seating that goes around the perimeter of the main room with all the basins. It was so beautiful, actually. I'm looking up and it was quite a tall room. And I could tell this was really the part of the hammam that was the oldest. These walls were indeed from the 15th century. And I thought it was just so cool that it was still functional after 560 something years. They had kept this going, that they had preserved this building. It was so cool. Because, of course, I had been, at that point, I'd been into cathedrals that were 1,000 years old, and that was great, and they were beautiful and big. But this was like being in a machine that was still functioning, in a way. That's what it felt like. A machine that was designed to, dare I say, maybe even help heal me. And there were things that I was healing from at the time. And as I guess we're always recovering from something on some level, right? So the guy waves me in, and I lie on my stomach, and the towel's just covering my butt at this point. And it's still kind of humid, and this guy is a good masseuse. I don't know what to say. He really got in there, it's like the shiatsu, kind of like using his thumb and stuff. And it was really, really welcome and a really lovely way, I thought, to finish my time in Istanbul. But the funny part was that, and I think I'd heard about this, but part of this whole ritual, because there's definitely a ritual component to this, were bubbles. And I like a bubble. I like a foam sometimes. And I don't know why this was necessary, but I just remember that part of this was, I guess it was just part like washing after the massage. But I just remember he covered my back in bubbles, and I thought it was very funny at the time. And then I flipped over, and I want to say, that's right. He also massaged my legs. So I flipped over, and he massaged my legs, and he put the bubbles on my legs. So I was like this foam person. It was very funny, and I wish that I'd been able to take a picture of that, and he just worked. He did some tissue massage on my legs and went to my shins, and he even massaged my feet and my toes, which was really nice because walking around a lot, I can feel really good, and it can be very healing and therapeutic to get a foot massage as part of this. So I was like over the moon. I was feeling fantastic. But there was he definitely got some water, and he rinsed off the bubbles for my legs and for my, I think he also gave me a bit of a head massage. It was really nice. So I was just, endorphins were in my body moving around at that point. Pretty sure, but I had an actual robe, and they gave it to me, and it was a whole, everything's folded and nice. And I made my way up to the second floor, which was the chilling out area that had some chaise lounges and other things. And I met a very nice couple from India, I believe it was from Gujarat. And they were saying, oh yes, this is our first time. And they were just had such a lovely time. And I thought, wow, it'd be really nice to share this with a partner or a lover. And I was just, and there was tea. Can't forget about the tea. There was sort of unlimited tea, which was nice. I mean, tea is cheap, but there was a tea machine on the first floor, and a ton. I'm surprised I don't have a photo of the stack of these mugs, these little mugs. They just stacks and stacks and stacks, and a very vaguely steampunk sort of tea, hot water boiling machine. I think it was orange brass. It was a very cool machine. So here I am sat, lying back, drinking tea, just having a lovely time and feeling very grateful. And I think that was the point where I went in and took the video that I'll share. I took the YouTube short and TikTok video that I'll put in the show notes, where I'm like, wow, great experience, 10 out of 10. And it was kind of funny now looking back on it, because my original plan was to bring one of my books. This is kind of vaguely embarrassing maybe now, was to bring the book I had printed when I was in France of my fourth book, the first in my nonfiction, the book 10,000 Hours in Paradise, Part 1. I had a small version of a travel edition of 10,000 Hours in Paradise, and one of the things I was doing a lot at the time was traveling with this and playing around with different kinds of promotions and marketing, going, hey, check it out, this book's traveling around the world. And it was cute, and sometimes it was probably corny, but I realized that I realized after 5 minutes in this place, because I'd had it in my backpack, of course, I realized that it was very inappropriate to, first of all, take any photos in the sensitive areas, and especially inappropriate to take video. So that went out the window. And also, even if no one had been there, the book would not have agreed very well with the steam. So, although there were places that didn't have steam, but I was in a mode at that point where I would just kind of bring the book everywhere and just see what was possible. I do have the book in the video in the changing room because I was trying to promote it. So please pardon that video if it seems corny. I was doing a lot of marketing experiments at the time. But of course, I was starving after this experience because I just lost water, and that's why they serve tea. Your body is doing a lot of recuperating and flushing toxins, I guess. And I went to this vegan place, and it's something I love about Istanbul is there are a fair amount of just incredible vegan places that have plant-based food, and I got this pumpkin bread, which is also in the bonus. The bonus is really beautiful, making me so hungry just looking at it right now. But I was after having a snack. I think I also went to. There was another place that I thought I had a. Maybe I only have a video. There was a place I went where I found vegan pasta. You know, where they have the sauce is like a cashew base, which I'm of the opinion like anybody would prefer the cashew based sauce over the dairy sauce, but that's just me. It's very rich and thick and creamy and has a great fat profile as well. And I think that was the afternoon I did that, but I don't have a photo of that. So I refilled my body and started walking around and sort of exploring Istanbul at night, which I never really wandered the streets so much at night. This was what was this, like my 8th day or something like that? So I found myself wandering around. I don't really know why exactly I went up to this spot, but I found myself wandering up sort of back over to the Bosphorus Strait because there was this mosque. It's the Dolmabahce Mosque, Dolmabahce, which was completed not that long ago, from 1853. And I took what I feel are some pretty beautiful and haunting photos of Istanbul at night, including the Bosphorus Bridge all lit up, taking the metro around. And there, you know, it's so interesting. There are essentially alleys that have to have steps because Istanbul, that part of Istanbul has quite a few hills. I also wandered back over to the Galata Konak Cafe, which somehow the door was open. And they were open rather late. Istanbul, a lot of stuff is open rather late. And I realized for the first time the really pretty bulb lamps made a return. The bulb lamps over the entrance were all on, of course, more noticeable at night. That were almost more like the pattern like a boba tea, like these little spheres. But it had some things in common with the bulb lamps that I saw in the Grand Bazaar. So it's cool to see sort of these reoccurring motifs. I mean, Istanbul and all of Turkey has such a strong cultural identity, such a strong artistic sense. It was really, I found it quite inspirational to be surrounded by that. Anyway, I went back up to the roof of the Galata Konak Cafe and got some photos of Galata Tower at night, which I think are actually a bit more pretty. And the minarets, which was also lit up for some reason. They just have lights. I think it must just be a historical bit. And in a restaurant in the distance that was all lit up in rainbow colors, which was really nice. It was a very colorful evening. I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, and I think Turkish people have said this, that Istanbul is probably a bit more pretty at night. I guess that's true for many big cities. There's just a sense of pride in lighting up and decorating the city in these minutiae of colors. And yeah, it was a really lovely final evening. I think I even called a friend. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a friend from Hawaii. It was his birthday. And I called him and I'm like, hey, I'm by the Dolmabahce Mosque, which nobody in America has heard of, but it's pretty wild and interesting. And I was just having a blast, you know. He was really touched. I remember his birthday, but I was just having a blast to take this light rail, take this train. It's very cheap, you know. For me, it was like less than $1, and I felt so grateful that I got to experience some really authentic Turkish experience. I mean, maybe people can argue with me about that. Maybe people will in the comments. And I'd like to hear your perspective. But to be in that hammam, that the door very proudly said 1454, the Ağa Hamamı, which I should have mentioned that too. When there's a G with a little hat over it, it just means elongate the vowel. You don't actually pronounce the G. It's kind of confusing. But this is what the internet says.
Ağa Hamamı.
Only in Turkish would they have a G be silent and mean expand the vowel. But what an amazing experience. And I highly recommend the Ağa Hamamı. Hamam. It's funny. Isn't it a funny name? I think it's a funny name. Highly recommend it. I don't know because inflation happens and money changes. I don't know what it would be for the package now. It might be cheaper. It might be more expensive. I imagine it's plus or minus 15% of what I paid. I can't imagine it being super crazy. It might even be half the price. I can put in the show notes, I can put their website and you can figure it out. Of course, I don't know when you'll be listening to this, what decade you've got a hold of this transmission and decrypted it. We can only hope that society still exists. And in closing, I'd like to recommend Istanbul. I'd like to recommend hammams. I'd like to recommend baklava. And I do hope that I can have an excuse to be back in that part of the world that will flow together again at some point, because Istanbul is quite a remarkable and dynamic, just really, really just a lovely, lovely place. And I do recommend October. I think that's that's when I was there. I think that's quite a good month. It was quite comfortable. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. So thanks for listening to Wanderous. I apologize if I've seemed a little off. Like I said, I'm getting over a cold, but I wanted to make sure I put this out for you. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. It really does help me out. And I also really love to hear your comments. I usually get some pretty great comments on the Spotify, but I welcome them everywhere. Anywhere that's convenient for you. I want to know what you appreciated about this episode, and I want to know if you have any questions. I'm an open book about my travels. One of the intentions, in fact, one of the missions of this show is to inspire you and to sort of take some of the anxiety away, take some of the sense of uncertainty, which, I can only do so much of that. But I hope this helps take some of the uncertainty and anxiety away for you going to a foreign country, or even just going to somewhere in your own country that you've been a bit nervous about. But you know what? The people over there, they have a lot in common with you. Sometimes that's hard to see, but they really do. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind, especially these days. So many of these differences, Ram Dass, which is a great spiritual teacher I appreciate, he would always say, when you're walking, it's one of the little stories he would tell. When you're walking down the street and you look at trees, right? Every tree you can appreciate. You don't go, oh, that pinion is kind of short and kind of weird. You just go, oh, a pinion. Oh, a hala tree. Well, that's a Hawaiian tree, but oh, an oak tree. Oh, a birch. What a interesting life living in this part of the world. What an interesting organism. But with people, it's always like smarter, dumber, richer, poorer, fatter, skinnier, taller, shorter. It's all these differences that we come up with to try to create this. I mean, I'm sure there's like evolutionary reasons for it, but it's all of these differences that are less important than the similarities, I think you'll find. So I think I've cut out all of the times I've coughed. Editing this has been so fun. And sharing this story has been very fun with you. Please, once again, leave a comment if you've enjoyed this. I really appreciate it. Or just hit the thumbs up button. I know you're tired of hearing that. But it does help with the yada, yada, yada algorithm. And you can always follow me on social media at Hello Crusoe. So word hello, Crusoe. And you can always find all the bonuses for this show at patreon.com, patreon.com/Hello Crusoe. Same exact username. I try to make it easy for people. And if you've been to Turkey, feel free to comment and let me know what you think. I like to know what stood out to you. And if you have questions, feel free to let me know. I'm always here at your service. I will endeavor to show up to answer questions to these things. Oh, and I should say, don't forget to subscribe to the show if you're not already, because Nepal is off the hook. Nepal is just wild. Nepal was the only time in this entire, let's call it, basically 3-year nomadic journey. Going to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, was the only time I got like palpable culture shock, where I was like, I don't know how to function here. So we'll get to that, because that's exciting. Because whenever that happens, then you know there's something to work with. There's something you can grow through this, and you're not going to be the same person on the other end. And that's exciting. As long as you stay hydrated and get enough sleep. Aloha.